Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone at Bangalore Tech Summit. It's a great pleasure to be connected from the mountains of Ladakh, where outside it was, I think, -7 degrees last night. And of course, inside my passive solar house, it is 24 degrees with no heating, no power bills. So, good morning from a warm room in very cold Ladakh. Um, Great to hear about the theme innovation for social impact that I'll be sharing with you a little about. And I was told also that the theme was next is now. Now, when we say next in now, we mostly think of next technology, next gadget, next rocket. But I also want you to understand that next can be little gloomy also. The next famine, the next forest fires, the next glacial melt, the next glacial lake outburst flash flood that kills so many people. All these things are also waiting in queue for to meet us if we don't act in good time and get our acts together. So next is now also for living in such a way on this planet that we do not have to use and throw the planet. I'm sometimes worried when innovators like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos talk about the next planet to go after trashing Earth. Life will not be possible on Earth, so we better start preparing for Mars, which to me is a defeatist approach. I think as much energy as they leaving the Earth needs to be spent on improving the Earth so that this planet we don't, throw and go to green and make livable planets like Mars. Good to have a spirit of exploration, but we must take good care of the only home that we have so far. And there's nothing wrong with this home, is what I'll share with you. There's a lot of work, though, to make this home more livable. And therefore, Next is Now should also take good care of how to tackle the next big challenges that the planet is going to face, and not just fix problems, but also preempt and prevent problems by living in harmony with how our planet, expects us to live. So let me just share a little bit of my own stories from Ladakh. I grew up in a very, very, very tiny village with no schools. It was a tiny village of 5 households, and I always tell people that that was 40 years ago. Today it has grown 100% to become a village of 10 households. Still a little smaller than Bengaluru, but anyway, when you are in a tiny village without schools, nature takes control and helps you learn. And I have always believed that learning really doesn't happen in schools. Learning happens with the software. Now, you are at the Tech Summit, so let me talk in tech talk. The best software for learning is not all the ed tech that you hear of now. The bestest software that comes for learning is curiosity. And nature packs this software together with the hardware from the beginning when you unbox it, the hardware being the human baby. When the human baby is unboxed into this world, that baby is preloaded with a great software that will make her or him learn always, unless we break that software, which we are very good at doing in our schools, in our families, how we kill this software called curiosity. Unless that happens, you cannot stop a human baby from learning. So I had no problems having no schools, no regrets actually, because I think bad schools are worse than no schools, because if there are no schools, then nature takes over and curiosity is your school or your software that helps you. So I learned from nature outside in the real world. And I tease my friends who went to good schools by telling them that when you all were learning about, roots, shoots, and leaves from pages of a book, I was there on a farm putting a seed in the ground and seeing the roots go down, shoots come up, and leaves unfurl without having to memorize LEAF, leaf, and LEAVES, leaves, the mumbo jumbo of the language that we have, English. So getting me directly to the grasp of concept, which helps me then to understand photosynthesis and so on without having to bother about LEAF. So that was my great childhood with this great software. And curiosity is one of the fundamental blocks that you need for innovation, I feel. Curiosity is that which, makes your arsenal of weapons that will come handy someday, sometime when you are working on a project. If you are curious and are always questioning things, you would have so many answers that even if people around you do not appreciate. I remember when I was a child, my elder siblings would see me coming from a distance and just get up and walk away saying, here comes the police inspector. Because I would keep asking questions. Why this? Why that? How? So that's curiosity. That's what helps the best of education. Because I forgot to tell you, I didn't go to any schools till about 9 years of age because we didn't have any schools. And that was the best part of my learning phase. Actually, it dipped down the curve when I was dragged into a real school where I was made to sit on the back benches or outside the classroom door as if I would learn more outside the door than in front of the teacher. But looking back, I don't even regret that, because I can today say that I was also an outstanding student. Outstanding. You can guess what I mean. So, after what next should be innovation to tackle the challenges, I'll take you through some images from Ladakh, which will make more sense than my 1,000 words, as they say. So with images, I'll share this story of Ladakh, how we have been solving our challenges rather than running away from them, even in the harshest climate, perhaps on the planet Earth. Sometimes we are called the third pole after the first and the second, or north and the south. So how do we make life livable? How do we have social impact through innovation in even the harshest of the climate? You all are lucky. You all are in a warm, tropical plains. We are very different world, definitely in the mountains. You all work with digital, artificial intelligence. We, for a change, work with natural intelligence, but we share a common, which is innovation, which is problem solving. So around that theme, I'll share, even if from a very different world. You are in a tech summit, but I think too much of tech is also too much. So maybe it will be refreshing for you to see a bit of real world of rock and sand and sun and earth and ice. So let me take you to a little bit of that. I'll try and share my screen from here now. So to just introduce you to Ladakh, it's the top north of our country. in the Himalayas or actually across the Himalayas. Correct would be across, trans-Himalayan rather than Himalayan. If we were Himalayan, we would be lush green because that's where the monsoon clouds shed their moisture. But we are in the trans-Himalayas, across the Himalayas, where actually it is a desert. So I'll share about that desert now. But before that, I'll just sum up what I was saying a little while ago about the foundations of innovation for impact. Curiosity, as I said, in this Ladakh, I was helped only or mainly by curiosity as a learning software. And curiosity makes you wonder, ask questions, and learn. But curiosity alone, without empathy, without a feeling for others, to solve other people's problems, to make it a better world, without that, curiosity will just be entertainment or sometimes bothering people and nothing more. So what I feel looking back at my life is, along with a lot of curiosity, one has to have a lot of empathy for the pains of the world, the challenges faced by the people, and the will to do something. And because empathy alone with curiosity will be just like a prayer, may the world be better, and you would do nothing to make it better. So when you have that will to change things, initiative, then I think these are the three legs on which innovation for impact can stand. Even in business entrepreneurships, innovation for business, I think empathy is a must. Without empathy, you may come up with gadgets and gizmos, but they'll be more for yourself. It can be for, profits and so on. These solutions will go for a few years, but not longer. The best businesses, the best entrepreneurships, and best solutions are ones that actually solve real people's serious problems. And in the process, a byproduct is money for the entrepreneur. So money, I feel, is always a byproduct, and it's best as a byproduct. It should lead to impact. That's when, whether it is business entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, it works the best. So these are the foundations on which I would say innovation for impact or entrepreneurship should stand, and you'll go far if these are the foundations. Finally, if you have the will to change things, things go far. So I'll come to a few more images of Ladakh to share with you. Like I said, it is across the Himalayas, and it is very dry, desert-like. Almost no rainfall or precipitation. It's only 100 millimeters in a year. So nature has truly left us high and dry, you can say. Temperatures could be plus to minus 35, and actually if you happen to fly to Ladakh, you would from the skies say that it is uninhabitable. It looks more like a moonscape or a Marscape than a landscape on planet Earth. A Marscape. By the way, this slide I put in just to confuse you. This is a picture of the Mars. So you get an idea of how close Ladakh is to Mars. Outside my window, the scenery is not very different from this. So I want to tell Elon Musk that there's more on Earth to make livable than just outer planets. Sure, those also, but let's not forget what we have on the planet Earth. So this is Ladakh. And what makes it different from Mars or Moon is the green patch that you see below. That's what human contribution is. These are Ladakhi villages where our ancestors had mastered the art of not waiting for water from the skies, but rather channelizing melting fossilized water. In other words, glaciers, which are like thousands of years old water repositories. So then you get it to flat patches of desert, and you grow wheat, barley, peas, apricots, apples, peaches, plums, and grapes. That's what human beings can do if they want to work on the planet Earth, even in the harshest climates. So nature has been rather challenging for us. So you can see how it can be cold in winters, and we are not only an ethnic minority, linguistic minority up in the mountains, it's even technological. Things that work in Bengaluru or Delhi don't work, like a tap. Running a tap is a circus altogether, unless you come up with solutions to do that, as you will see. And despite all these challenges in these mountains, people have not only survived, but a whole colorful civilization has thrived with its own language, literature, music, dance, and a lifestyle in harmony with nature. Now, I want to stress here that innovation is not just about, whirring gadgets and gears and belching smoke engines and so on. I grew up in Ladakh looking at innovation in a very different way, actually. You just will share a story or two from what I saw when I grew up in Ladakh. People in Ladakh didn't have technology or the money to make life more comfortable as people in California would have. But then what I saw is that for children, for example, cold winters, harsh, cold third pole winters, our ancestors didn't have all the money to burn on heating and making it comfortable and so on, but they would devise social innovation in such a way that children would actually look up to winters. I remember when winter came, you would perhaps think that people would want to leave Ladakh and run away. No, as children, we looked up to the winter, coming of winter, waited for it eagerly. Can you guess how? This was the trick and the spark of intelligence of our ancestors. So what would happen is that as winter came, children would huddle up for storytelling, and storytelling was restricted to winters only. So only in winters can you tell stories. Winter would be spent with children around their grandparents listening to beautiful stories. The art of storytelling is in itself very advanced, or used to be in Ladakh. And then come spring, and the first greens grow outside in the fields, and storytelling would become a sin, a sinful activity. Nobody would listen to or tell stories. They would all go out and start their farming work. And I used to wonder, why would storytelling be a sin? Later, I understood as I grew up that they were very clever. This resource of storytelling, they didn't want to waste it around the year. They kept it reserved for winters when it is harsh. And secondly, if you kept telling stories in summers, then you won't be able to make enough food and supplies for the winter. So come spring, it becomes a sinful activity. Beautiful innovation, which actually worked. Children used to look forward to winters. Another thing they did for grown-ups and children together, again, people look up to winters. Even now, winters are a long-awaited thing to happen, because in winters, all monasteries and villages have festivals in monasteries, which are very colorful. People all go and they count the harsh winter from festival to festival to festival, this festival, that festival, and you realize the winter is gone. So again, they were very clever. They didn't keep any of these festivals in the summers. they kept it all in the winters so that winters can be equally interesting. So innovation can be social and can have a huge impact without a single gadget moving. That's something I thought I would share from my childhood. Anyway, so going on to solve challenges in Ladakh and making it life more comfortable here, let me share with you some more thoughts and things. So, as we are a tiny minority, what I saw the biggest hit of this was the children in the schools. With textbooks that didn't make any sense, the language was not comprehensible for the children who didn't speak English or the state language Urdu back then. The results in schools were so poor. Schools were a pain for children, particularly for minorities. And it's a pain for anybody. But when you have schools that have nothing that is relevant to your world, when textbooks come from New Delhi that talk about elephants, and air conditioners, and then the textbooks go with A for apple, B for ball, and F for fan in a minus 20 classroom, confuses children more than it helps them understand the concept behind F as the sound, F in our language. It doesn't simplify. So with all these challenges, education was a big mess. 95% of the students used to fail. And I came face to face with this situation when, while doing my mechanical engineering, I had to support my own education and I had to teach students to earn some income to support my engineering, which I did very well. I earned a lot. It was very innovative coaching systems that I launched at 19 and made a lot of money in just vacations. Enough in 2 months to see me through 3 years of engineering. So much money I made. And that changed my life because it made me connect with empathy that life is not just about what I need, I am interested in, my passion and so on, but also what needs me. My interest was mechanical engineering, but I saw that the children were suffering, failing in large numbers, and I couldn't just become an engineer and walk away dusting my own clothes. So I decided I love engineering, but I have to keep it on a back burner for now and solve the problem of education. And therefore, what needs me was these children who were, for no reason, no fault of theirs, branded as failures, shackled. So then I finished my engineering as I loved the field, but started working in education reforms initially. And for that, I collaborated and networked with other young people, many of whom were failures, many of whom were university graduates, and formed an organization called SECMOL to address this problem of education. There was a culture of blaming the teachers, blaming the children for being no good, retarded, etc., etc. Some teachers who would come from other places would even say that Ladakhi children can never do maths and science well. There's not even enough oxygen in the air. They don't have brains. They are retarded. So we said, no, we'll look at the root causes rather than blame people. And we saw very soon that it was the textbooks which were irrelevant for mountains. It was the teachers who were good but had no training. So we did trainings. It was the people who didn't feel for education. So we mobilized and sensitized masses around the field of education. And when you act, there's also, impact. So very soon we saw the results going up from 5% consistent to 23%, 36, 35, 49, 75. These are the 10th grade results. So one thing it proved scientifically was that the failure was not because of oxygen in the air, but rather the system itself was failing, not the children. So around this time, when results had come up and was now almost stagnant at 75, we said, what about the 25% who are still failing? We must do something so that they are not given up. So for those who were still failing, we did a school that became the most memorable initiative that I have taken. We said no one really is a failure, even the ones who still were failing. It was as if the children were saying, if we don't learn the way you teach, then teach us the way we learn. And children do not always learn from textbooks, please understand. It's not in our nature, nor in our evolution, nor in our wiring of our brains that we learn from letters of a book. We are more wired to learn from real life out in nature as hunter gatherers. 20,000 years ago, we learned by doing. And as farmers settled 10,000 years ago, we learned by going on the field and doing it, never from lectures or letters. And this is just 300 years old, and we cannot say those who can't do letters and lectures are failures. We are more designed for real life experiences. So for these children, we went to a patch of land in the middle of nowhere by the Indus River and wanted to build a different kind of school. With this batch of some 10 or 12 failures, and some of us teachers or guides, we designed and built a school that was to be very different from the normal schools. And before we built anything on this desert, we did a classroom or workshop on how to build using all the geography, physics, maths in the textbooks. We applied them to conceive and design a school that will be naturally self-sufficient, self-reliant, zero energy, and off-grid, when these terms were actually not even coined back in the early 90s. In the next 5 years, we had built a school which was truly very different. To begin with, it was a school where the admission criteria was not distinctions or marks, but rather failure in the system. Those who failed had better chance of admission. If you have passed, you could be in the waiting list. This school was built with nothing but natural materials like earth or soil, which you find right under your feet, free of cost, abundant, poor, rich, everybody can afford. And it was powered by the sun right above our head. Poor, rich, all can afford this abundant supply of energy. You make the two meet with human ingenuity and you live happily ever after. So this was a school that was built with earth and powered with sun. And we applied many interesting, innovative ways to solve the problem of failing education system. We said children should not be learning things only, from books and lectures. They should live their lessons. So this school is run by the students themselves. They form a government. They have a small election. They have a little parliament, and they have a little presentation in the parliament of what they do. And this elected government takes the management of the school. This is living the field of civics and political science and governance. When you actually do it, you learn the inside out of it and are ready for the real world. So in the parliament, they would discuss and take charges, and they would be given portfolios as ministers do in real life. And these elected leaders, would take charge of, for example, the cows on the campus for milk, the solar gadgets for cooking energy, the gardens, organic gardens, the power plant, the greenhouses, and so on. Yet they would apply their lessons in these. For example, the milking girl would apply statistics to track the productivity of the cow with her bar charts and histograms and pie charts and so on. So everything comes alive and becomes unforgettable. rather than scolding them for forgetting their lessons, make the lessons unforgettable. Similarly, we would use this abundant solar energy for everything from cooking to greenhouses to natural lighting to electricity, water heating, water pumping. Even the cows on this campus live in solar heated cowsheds. More complex theories like microbial theory, how do you memorize them? Well, you apply it to sterilize fruits like apricots, which have a shelf life of just 1 week, and you apply these theories and make jam, and you get a shelf life of 2 years. So this is how they learn, by applying things and with all your sense organs and not just your ears for lectures and eyes for letters. And then a magic happens. Some of them fall in love with some of these experiences and make it their livelihoods. So those working with apricots have become startups that supply jam and pulp to industries around the country. Others who were taking care of visitors to the campus have become globally famous travel companies, like this all-women's travel company. Yet others go back and add value to resources in their own region, like yak and yak milk and cheese. Now, all chapters in your textbooks are applied around phenomena that are relevant to you in your region. And innovation is a running cross-cutting theme around the themes of earth, sun, ice, and fire. So with earth, as I said, the buildings are built. With sun, the buildings are heated. You can see these buildings have a south-facing transparent film, a plastic film that makes it collect the sun's heat. And this is how the engine works. Down here, you can see how the greenhouse takes the sun's heat and the air inside gets warm and hot air rises. This is the chapter on heat in class 8th or 9th. Convection is when air rises and moves with the heat. So hot air in the greenhouse rises, enters the building from the top windows, loses it gives its heat to the cold walls, makes them warm, but becomes cool and dense and is pushed into the greenhouse. And the cycle continues all day with no fan, no ventilators, power bills, pollution, nothing. Natural convection. This is what convection is, and we memorize convection, conduction, radiation. Similarly, conduction brings the heat of the sun from the south wall into the room at midnight when you really need heat. It's thanks to conduction. From molecule to molecule, particle to particle, the heat travels. And similarly, when you close all the doors and windows at night, then the walls start radiating to the inmates. And that's how you keep warm. So there is radiation. Now, lessons on heat become unforgettable. As I said, earth is a great material, and yet it is rejected as kacha makan, in our country. But here's my inspiration for building with earth. This building we found by carbon dating is actually 1500 years old, and people have plundered and removed all the roof and windows and doors, and yet it stands 4 stories tall. And we call it kacha makan, 1500 years. And cement houses, do you know? They have a life of 60 to 100 years, and we call them pakka makan. Very interesting. So we said we need to learn these crafts and arts, but our ancestors who taught these are not around. We have all moved to cement. So we have no teachers. And we said we'll still learn from our ancestors. So we did a bit of reverse engineering, went to the best kept old buildings and took samples. And as you can see at the bottom, analyzed them in laboratories to see what worked. What was the mix that lasted so long? And then taught it to our students so that we can make it and hand it over to posterity so that people can live happily in soil, mud homes without paying, without working all life to earn money to pay for things that so pollute the planet like cement. So what you get is a school or a world where you live in ultra modern, I would call it postmodern, building that you see at the background, where it keeps at plus 20 or 18, even in minus 15 or 20, without any heating, without any smoke. What could be more modern than that? I don't think of the furnaces and the heaters as modern, but this is modern. And a lifestyle with, at the same time with ancient animals used rather than tractors, which give nothing but smoke, and big loans for which farmers commit suicide. These animals give you the manure that becomes a food for the plants, and they eat what is wasted from the farms. What could be more beautiful solution? So, temperatures in these buildings have stayed at roughly plus 18, even when outside it is minus 18. So this is the magic of innovation to have impact in a harsh place like Ladakh. Imagine what you can do in more comfortable places. Now, innovation needs to be applied even for marketing. You have solved the problem. That's a lab, and nobody loves a lab as much, more than a scientist. So it's something that only scientists love, but it has to reach the people. So how to market it? While we were doing all these solar and earth buildings, the outside world, the city of Leh, was going this way, as you can see, just imitating what was happening in Srinagar or Delhi, buildings that would be not for Ladakh, with tin roofs and concrete walls that would be like deep freezers in winter. And to counter their own doing, what they would do? Burn, burn, burn. Burn anything that you get. Burn oil, burn garbage, burn wood, burn whatever. And this is what the city atmosphere becomes. This is a morning in December in Leh. Now that people have money, they buy more fuel to burn the bad buildings that they built to keep them warm. So we wanted to change it to earth buildings with solar heating. And yet we didn't want to, go wrong, because earth buildings have a stigma, as you would say, kacha makan, poor people's building. So we said we need to change that. If we say it is for poor people and give earth buildings to poor people, then even the poor will reject. Definitely not the rich will want it, but even the poor will reject. And we learned this very well from the marketing faux pas or mistake of, I think, Tata Nano. You would remember what a big deal it was when Tata Nano was supposed to come, and soon it vanished. It vanished. And I think the big mistake they made was not the car. It was a wonderful car, but the branding and positioning was a bit of a mistake. They presented it as the world's cheapest car. Now imagine, who wants to buy a car to say, I am in the cheapest car, I am the poorest person? You buy a car to show off that you have arrived, and the cheapest car doesn't do that. So we learned very quickly, and we applied this learning to our earth buildings. We didn't want people to feel we are in the cheapest building, poorest house. So we launched startups from our students, trained them, and they became entrepreneurs who could be called, and they would design and build for you at the high end of the society. We said we attack the top end of society, the elites, the haves, the richest. First. Ultimately, we'll help the poor, but the path to the poor goes via the rich, as you will see. So we built high-end rammed earth buildings like they do in California, where these are considered like what even the super rich can't afford, because it has so much manual labor that Americans can't afford. And rammed earth buildings are celebrated as the richest of the rich can afford. So we did that kind of building for the rich in Ladakh. These are ultra modern buildings which do not need any heating in winters. Once this happened, the whole approach and the way they look changed, and it became aspirational. So this was our innovation for an impact in the society. And earth buildings do not need to be primitive or poor inside. In fact, you can apply your mind and your sense of aesthetics, and they can be actually beautiful. I have so many American and European friends who come and say, I wish I had a building like this in Switzerland, for example. And then an interesting phenomena happened. Now you pay attention to what happened around this positioning and branding. 2012, up there you see, this is actually an earth building. This is an earth building, but it has been plastered with cement. The people who owned felt so small about earth, so stigmatized it was, that they would not be able to afford a cement building, but they would put a cement plaster on the building and show off as cement building. We have arrived. Then by 2014, we intervened and started this policy of attack the rich with the best of earth and sun technologies. And it soon caught up. Resorts, hotels, rich people lined up to have such buildings. And by 2018, you see another phenomena. This building that you see is actually concrete. It's actually concrete, but they have plastered with earth to show off as we are also earth building. So this is the change in mindset that we saw from marketing alone, positioning and branding. So you have to be very innovative in that also. Now, I don't have a lot of time, so I'll quickly run through other solutions like these were for warmth in a cold, affordable warm habitats in cold polar climate. Now, water solutions for a place where glaciers are melting away thanks to climate change. The real glaciers are fast melting, so we have had to resort to artificial glaciers. At our school, we started working on these freezing the winter water. You can see a Ladakhi village with a stream. This stream has water even in winter. Something flows, but nobody farms. So how about freezing it in winter and storing it as a ice tower, ice bank, so which melts in spring and gives water to the farmers. Just simple middle school physics, water keeps its level, maintains its level. So just put a pipe upstream and bring it downstream. There'll be pressure because of gravity from this principle, and there'll be a fountain in the sky, and the air is minus 20, so water loses its latent heat and freezes instantly to become a cone. And a cone, the geometry is such that it has minimum surface area or low surface area for the volume, so it doesn't melt. So it's frozen in January, but unlike other ice and snow, which goes away by March, this lasts till June, July. This one is 1 million liters of water, which melted slowly through the months of May and June, when actually water is needed. And then you collect it, and then you use it to grow trees on a desert which has never seen any greens. Thanks to this, bottleneck is solved and plants can grow. Now it is a movement in many villages. There are competitions around making ice stupas and so on. And this got us the Rolex Award for Enterprise. But we are here. I'm showing this to tell you that we are not proud of this. This is not the solution for climate change. This is just a small local fix. There is a but. There is a big but. In the end, I want to give you the message that this but is what we need to address. This but is the next. The next is now. When you say the next is now, if we adapt our lifestyles so that this planet will remain livable, we can live on the planet. I'm not worried about which gadget will do what. I'm more worried about livability of this planet. So we said we can't be just making ice stupas and solar buildings in Ladakh. We have to solve this challenge. Our glaciers are not melting because of us, handful of people in the mountains. It's the metros and mega cities of the world, the people and their lifestyles That's contributing to the glaciers melting. That's forcing us to make these little, artificial glaciers. So last year we started another movement, an innovative movement, I think, to urge the people of the big cities in the world to please live simply so that we in the mountains may simply live. It's a We didn't want it to become a grim message of preaching. We wanted it to be a fun thing for young people, so we made it into a crowdfunding site. A crowdfunding site where you don't pay money. The planet doesn't need money. It needs your lifestyle change, behavior change. So it's a crowdfunding of pledges for the planet. You must, I urge you, go look up ilivesimply.org. It'll explain you, and you pledge and pay in behavior change. For example, you could say, I'll not use cars, instead I'll use bicycles, or at least half the time. That would be equivalent to like $5,000 of contribution. Or if you say, I will not take aeroplane, wherever possible trains, that will actually amount for the environment $10,000 of contribution. You could say, I'll go vegetarian, or half the times vegetarian. So much greenhouse gases you will save, and so much pain for people like us in the mountains where glaciers are melting. So this is what I want to appeal. Next is now. So please act and get your act together so that this planet remains livable, so that we in the mountains do not have to become climate refugees because of droughts, and those at the seashores like Maldives or Kerala coast or Sundarbans are not drowned to death. Next is now. Please get your acts together. Thank you very much. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions if you have.